Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Rutherford County Schools. Tonight is our first budget meeting for the next school year. First order of business will be the Pledge of Allegiance, led tonight by Board Member Aaron Holliday.
Attention, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Board. The first thing we want to consider tonight is the bid that's on your desk, March 13th, 2018, and the director is going to handle that, and he's ready to go.
Okay, this is E-rate. This is when you get your telephone bill and you see that little charge off there for federal. It goes to the feds, and some comes back to the state and back to the schools. So that's what this is, and it is due before we meet next week. So we got to do that. There are really two companies that do that. Basically AT&T and ENA. So school districts are using one of the two. This is to award AT&T the 2018-2019 E-rate TEBC mini bid contract. This recommendation is to award the AT&T to the 2018 E-rate Category 1 mini bid for the Tennessee Education Broadband Consortium, contract number 49001. AT&T is the lowest and best provider of internet access and data transport circuits to each school from the district hub. So the motion would be to approve AT&T for that.
Questions for the director?
You have a second sheet with some of the ENA, the two bids there. This is the ones that does your transport of your lines into your schools, the 47 schools. And up here, Ms. Williams is back there tonight, who deals with this all the time. If you have questions, I'll direct them to her. Her and Mr. Solomon go over these bids and all.
Questions? Last call. You've heard the recommendation, and I need a motion.
So move.
Mr. Hodge, a second.
Second.
Mr. Young, thank you. Any comments? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, if you would go to the stapled sheet there, budget items. And who's going to start us off? Director, you? Or?
I am.
Okay, Mr. Odom?
I would have to say of my 6 years with budget, this one has maybe more question marks than I've known for a while. Not from our expenditure side. We can estimate ours. But there are certainly several things on the revenue side. Still a little bit early. In fact, I'm going to ask you to flip over, if you will, to your page 7. Then we'll come back and kind of go through the budget, because that's kind of a summary. And this doesn't surprise you, some of this. We talked about this earlier. The first item in line 107 there, the BEP, a smaller increase for 18-19 because our TASER Fox index has increased. A higher index means a lower proportion of state funding. I mentioned this to you probably 6 weeks ago initially. The figure we received from Mr. Sandvik's friend at the state, maybe a 1/10 change, 1/10, and that was just on the TASER side. Don't know what the Fox side is, so this is an estimated number. But based upon our funding from the state, our BEP funding, a 1/10 of 1% change would cost us somewhere like $1,250,000, which, you know, that's about 20 teaching positions or so. But anyway, it's that ability to pay. So that's what, just kind of letting you know, but we do not know what that number is. I guess the other thing that's unknown to us is the property tax, certainly reappraisal year. So what will the county commission do with that? Will they adopt a certified rate? Or will it be something else other than that? With anything other than the certified rate, they would have to call a tax increase. It's election year, so that's an unknown for us in that, which happens every 4 years. The local sales tax, a slower rate of growth in 2016-17. We estimated 4.5% for last year. Actually, Lisa Nolan, I think, used about the same for the county, didn't she? Do about 4.5, something like that.
We
also?
may have gone a tad higher.
And that's what it'd been for the last 2 years in a row. Right now, it's running a little bit less than 4.5%. You know, something that could change, though, is I kind of made a note out there, is that weather warms up, car sales pick up. That's one of your biggest sales tax items. Of course, you just got through June to recover. But the other thing is that some of the federal income tax reduction, it puts more disposable income in people's hands. So very often they spend it. So hopefully over the next 2 or 3 months, and then starting in July on, the sales tax will get back up to at least 4.5%. We do know that Title II federal funding is going to be a reduction. The anticipated is a 20% reduction for 2018-19. And what we do with Title II funding is where we do teacher training. That's the DI conference that we do every summer, that sort of thing, providing in-service for teachers. We've kind of held back enough that we're going to be okay for 18-19. What really may hit under the president's proposal, 19-20, is to zero out Title II, no monies. And that's, what, $600,000 a year? It's a little over that, I think. $600,000 to $700,000 a year, something like that. So anyway, we'll be okay for next year, but you know, that creates the issue for next summer's training, maybe a year from now. So anyway, but that's just things for you to keep in your mind, and as we know more, we'll share that with you. So let's go back to page 1 and begin to look at some things. And again, stop me anytime or whatever you'd like to do in looking at these. You know, we're opening Rockville High. We did ask or did tell the commission, they voted for that. Over a 2-year period, we would set aside $2.5 million per year or $5 million for the startup of Rockville High. We did for last year the $2.5 million. Well, for this year, with $2.5 million. So we're going to have to set aside another $2.5 million. I didn't put that in an estimated additional totals or costs there, because I think we can do that from ending fund balance or possibly from our BEP growth monies, something like that. So didn't put it in there as a new cost, just keep it in your mind. Over the 2-year period, we have to set aside that $5 million. We know that the district retirement contribution, almost another percent, that's from the state. State's requiring about another percent. That's going to cost us about $2 million. It went from 9.08 to 10.46. So that's the change, 1.38%. We won't have any choice in that one. That's the one that you have to pay because it's a state assessment for the retirement. The district health insurance contribution, you know, we're looking at right now, some of the earlier figures is around 8%, what Ms. Street is telling us. And what the district's contribution to that increase, since it's a shared cost, and this is one of the bigger ones, is $3,750,000. That could go up or down. So just kind of as we start this budget, you know, those two fixed costs there is $5,750,000 just in retirement and insurance costs. So we start out with that hole to kind of dig out of that we'll have to have revenue for. I did something in this budget that I haven't done before. That little italicized 21.5%, that would be, in other words, that fixed and mandated cost is 1/5 of what our projected increase is this year. You know, and I haven't tried to calculate this or asked anybody to. A little over 70% of our budget is personnel, right? I think.
Benefits, it's closer to 80.
Is it closer to 80 now? So you would expect this to be significant, you know, when you would change either one of those two. So that kind of to give you an idea of what it costs. So any questions about fixed cost, mandated change there? You'd heard about this a little earlier in some of these numbers, so that's not new.
And Mr. Odom?
Yes, sir.
On these two costs, we're looking at what they are for existing staff. All the staff numbers you see below, it will be additional. We have retirement, we have medical insurance built into those numbers. It's not just raw pay.
So you understand what he's saying? When you get your teacher cost down here at 62.5, he's built in those two increases in. Of course, you don't really know till you employ somebody, will they take county insurance or not, you know, but a vast majority are doing it now, so you're very likely to, so we budget it. So let's go down and look at the next section then under assessment. And I decided to do something for you. Because testing and assessments has been such a big deal, we thought I'd do the breakdown of where we're spending. And now we've subtracted out the things that's not new, but I made you a note. The first one, line 9 on that page 1, is ACT Inspire. A few years ago, 3 years ago, I guess we had ACT Explore. ACT dropped that and no longer does Explore. This would be an 8th grade test, basically, that students take, and it gives them some predictions and projections for their ACT. High schools use that information to kind of see who may need to go in the honors, advanced honors, that sort of thing, something to do a projection with, and also gives parents and the students some background information too, to trying to acquire a certain ACT number. That's about 110,000, but we had been using SMOOP, if you remember, and that was really, you could use that in any grade, but we found that SMOOP is not as strong as we thought. Mr. Marshall's here if you want to question somebody that's doing this on a day-by-day basis. The schools were not using it that much and said they would rather have us to go back and took it ACT Inspire. So the cost of SMOOP, not doing that kind of counters that 110,000 that's in there for Aspire. The ACT High School Curriculum Support, principals have requested, this is a new item. This is some software and some other things to help with ACT prep and other things with students doing that. So that cost is about $85,000. I think that's money well spent. ACT Mastery Prep is another one. 10 and 11 kind of goes together, but some schools are choosing Mastery Prep, but not as many. So we're adding the additional $9,000 for middle schools can begin to look at that ACT suite and scores and use Mastery Prep. Some are doing that. That's $18,000. The Ingenuity Credit Recovery Software, that's not a new item. We've been doing online credit recovery software. The company we have been using is going out of business. So in order for us to replace that, the cost is not that much greater. It's more of a swap. We're going from one that's not supported to one that is. In fact, I think Ingenuity bought the old one. Am I right, Mr. Zago? So it's really a switch over what we're doing in that one. The K-9 Universal Screener for RTI Squared, we have to have a universal screener. That's a requirement of the state with RTI screening, roughly $350 a student. You have to give that to about 29,000 students. You do not give it necessarily to every grade and seniors and all too, but about 29,000 of our 45,000 students. So again, that's not new, but about $101,500 to do the screening that the state told us to do, but has not offered any money for it. So, Mr. Young, that's one of those unfunded mandates, kind of. The Phelps screener, we are also required by the state to do screening of incoming kindergarten students. And that's the Phelps that we use, $2.49. That's about $7,500. That's not new. We've been doing it. One of the things that we're seeing that Central Magnet and Thurman Francis Arts Academy, when they're trying to move kids into the high school and all, those students, because we do not have all of the years of 10 ready, they're purchasing an assessment. And I would recommend we do this to give those students who do not have 2 years of 10 ready scores that they can use for eligibility to our high school magnets. And that we need to do that also because we've been challenged over the years some about how somebody gets in and by using screeners or using the TN Ready, where we've had the 2 years because the state paused and didn't do the year. We don't have the 2 years on the students for this year. So hopefully after we do this in 1 year, that'll balance back out and we'll have 2 years of TN Ready to use and not have to purchase that again. Number 16 is Youth Science. Youth Science is a program that you would give 8th graders that is a high school aptitude test. This is a very good program. Oakland's used it this year. The Chamber of Commerce is very big on this because it really, if students take this test as 8th graders, it very often gives the counselors, the parents, and the students the aptitude of, hey, I'm pretty good in maybe engineering, or I'm pretty good in some of the human sciences or some of the other. So we've got a special price there for our about 4,200 8th graders would take this that helps them with their choices. Remember, a student entering high school must, in addition to the 4 years of math, 4 years of English, they have an elective focus. That elective focus could be in the arts, it could be in some other areas, but very often it's in career and technical education. So students who take this get back a really pretty good report about their strengths. It gives them back some information if they enter a field of their strength, projected out over a few years from now. What is that maybe pay in that field? What is the likelihood of being openings in that field? So it's a really good thing, I think, for parents and students to do this, but Oakland's found it very useful. Mr. Marshall, I mean, if y'all would like to ask him, I think he can tell you because they kind of piloted it this year. And it's worked very well, I think. Anybody have a question about that one?
Yeah. Is it possible that we could get a presentation on the youth science?
We probably could. We could even abbreviate one. I've seen one several times that even the Chamber of Commerce has done. There's two things maybe for our next budget meeting that I'd like to do. One, we're going to be looking at this 2-to-1 computers, so I'd like to kind of roll that plan at you for our people here. Will you work on something for us, maybe at the next one, a 10-minute or something, kind of overview of what youth science does and the kind of information it gives back for that? How do your counselors use that information?
Right now they're using we're in the process of scheduling, so they're using the results that we've gotten back to have those one-on-one conversations with the students to go over the results of the aptitude and how they're linked to possible careers that are also linked to possible pathways within the school, so that they can engage the students in that way. So, because a lot of times what you think you're interested in doesn't always line up with aptitude. So, it's having those real conversations with the students to have them think, that process out a little bit more and engage in that. And the other side of it is really helpful for us to have students think about possibilities that they didn't think that they had the aptitude to be successful in, and that's especially in our STEM area, where we've had a lot of our non-traditional students that have gone into that because of some of the results that they're seeing.
It's interesting you ask an 8th grader, why are you wanting this elective? Well, my friend's taking it. That's not really a good reason, because their aptitude may be different. But this gives you the conversations you can have with their parents. Also, it even projects ahead what colleges and universities are strong in that particular field that you can go to. So it's a good aptitude test. Much better, really, than what came with Explorer, because Explorer wasn't that good in that area.
The investment that we're making in ACT high school curriculum and the Mastery Prep software, the count there is 1, whereas these other counts are much, much larger.
It's a unit license.
I was going to ask, the licensure will be applicable to all of our high schools?
Anybody that's using that particular software would. It's just where it's a unit license, we put 1.
Okay.
If we had to pay a per pupil cost, we listed approximately how many students.
Gotcha.
Tried to build in a little bit of growth for next year, too. less the current budget, which I said some of those were used in 18-19, so Mr. Sandvig kind of added those up and subtracted. So the new monies is about $146,904, about a half of 1%. Okay? Anybody got any other questions on the assessment? But I thought some of you might like to see what assessments are out there, what we're using. This is certainly didn't include the state's 10 ready. Second page, certified personnel, new personnel. Using a starting number, maybe growth for teachers, we've found that really a 1-to-22 ratio. You kind of know that your K through 3 is 1-to-20. Even though some of your high school can be 30, some of your middle schools is 25, or 25 or 30. 22 seems to work pretty well. So if we were to grow 1,400 students, it'd take 64 teachers. Again, that's a flexible number a little bit. You get some more state money if you get more students, but it tends to run a year behind because ADM runs a year behind. So that's kind of how we're estimating it. And 62.5 is kind of our latest number of, we hire some people with advanced degrees, some with BS and straight out. Overall, it comes pretty close to this figure. The next one, ESL teachers. We hired 23 this year, 22. We're supposed to maintain a 1-to-35 ratio of students served. And yesterday, that number was 2,772 direct serve, which you get your 35 from. We have a little over 4,300 that go out with the transition 3 and 4. So the ones we're tracking for ELL is 4,300, but the ones direct service is 2,772 or thereabouts, and that changes daily. But so in order for us, we're going to have at least 12 teachers to meet the 1-to-35 ratio. They give you 1 year back. So we have to meet that ratio to start next year. And if we grow in EL for next year, that number will not hold it, but you have 1 year you can hold back till you have to meet it. But 1-to-35 is a pretty good ratio to maintain. Special ed teachers, estimating somewhere around 10. Again, about 11% sped. And again, you're taking your students and your growth. Those teachers, particularly a sped teacher, will serve around 20 students, something like that. If you're in CDC, you might be with 5 students or 8. You know, if in some other classes, you might be with 28 that's in and out. They wouldn't all be in there at one time, but through your day schedules, you work with them. So again, kind of an estimate there, 8 of the regular sped and about 2 CDC to meet growth. Interventionists for Title I schools. Again, here's what is changed. We've been using federal funds for some of our interventionists in Title I schools. So what happens is when we provide interventionists for RTI for the other schools, you cannot use those interventionists paid for by Title I funds to count in that ratio. It has to be above the non-Title I schools. So we're going to have to switch over to GP 8 teachers that had previously been in Title I schools that were paid for by federal funds. If not, it's called supplanting. It has to be, they have to get what everybody else gets plus anything added with Title I. So that one's not a choice.
Does that fall into the definition of unfunded mandate?
This is a rule. I guess it could hit that too. But I mean, these are people basically already working. We're talking about having to change the line item number to our line item number rather than the federal line item number. That's what that amounts to. Career and technical education teachers, Ms. Pilgrim's met with all the high school principals, Mr. Lewis, gone around what programs do we need. That number may be a little low, but that's what she told us, 6 teachers is her expected growth based upon programs for next year in the 15 pathways that we have. So That number came from her. Assistant principals, we're looking at about 3 there. Rocky Fork Middle will go up next year. That's your new school. We didn't staff it up, to start with. Oakland Middle School gets the annex. And the other one we're thinking, Siegel Middle, is probably going to pop over 1,200 or something next year. That's going to be right at, 1,400. So at Blackman Middle, we added one there. So Siegel Middle is probably going to need help with an assistant principal there. So kind of let you know that. The high school RTI Square coaches, we've been piloting for 2 years. Was there 1 to 2? Right.
Ours, the state mandate's been for 4.
But we've got to now move those coaches also into the remaining high schools.
We're in 3 of the high schools currently. We have coaches of the 7 traditional high schools that we have. We currently have coaches in 3. So with the Oakland High, Riverdale High School, and Laverne High School.
They piloted for us, those 3 schools. So this would be the other 5. That tends to be a little bit higher because they work an extra 10 days, is it?
They work an extra 2 days and they get an additional stipend. There's no leadership role that they're playing.
They're usually level 4 and 5 people. We've been picking for that. They're some of our best people. Some you really want to hold on to. We haven't had the school psychologist for a while, so my recommendation at this point is to try to add 1 additional school psychologist. Also, regular ed and SPED behavior specialist. We're having to do more interventions with students and all now. So earlier on, I never heard of a behavior specialist, but I have now. And these go in and work with students and with teachers of students to try to assist with that. So we have behavior. You have your ABA, certified person that's kind of the lead that's in SPED. We've never done behavior specialists, particularly with the regular ed side. But everybody that needs behavior interventions does not necessarily have a SPED designation. So with these 2 positions, I'd like to blend that some and say these 2 will work both regular ed and if we need it, SPED also. In other words, we'll kind of take their time to see what we can do. Some of that, will that be all local money or maybe some Fed in that one? All local? Okay.
Some of it will be federal match.
Okay.
Or SPED, but.
My recommendation this time, let's add 2. An ESL specialist, unless we reduce the number of days, that one could go over $100,000 there. That would help Ms. Hall. She evaluated 104 ESL teachers this year, what she's doing. So with her staff and the 94 teachers in the room, even principals and assistant principals, nobody's doing that. She's probably evaluating more than anybody in our whole school system. And she needs some help with the management of ESL. It's just gotten that large. So at least at some point, this would be a full year position. We'll leave open option to 240 days or whatever, but we do need to put in somebody for that one. Moving Mr. Holliday, the fine arts specialist, to full-time. That's a half position increase there. School technology specialists, again, 2. This is sometimes called STSs at the school level. These are the people that go out and work with schools and do some repairs and also do classes sometimes and technology training for teachers at the school, work with them individually. Music and art. Our middle schools are getting so large and the bands are so large. We took away a few years ago a half a position for their bands. We're looking at it, which means you have 1 band teacher, but this would give them another half. It's hard on the person that does that because they wind up going to 2 schools. But to try to look at what we can do to help with those large bands, Blackman High Art, and a little bit for elementary there simply because of numbers sometimes. We got some half-time elementary that we need to probably bump on up now to full-time, simply because of numbers in the school.
Mr. Odom, share with us a little bit. You've said sometimes it's better to just go ahead and build another school, because if we try and expand a school, we stretch the core, and sometimes it's not as efficient as we might want. And I'm drawing a comparison between that analogy and half-time teachers. Are we sometimes better to just put a full-time position, or do you evaluate and see that a half-time position is can it really be a bridge to a successful setting?
We have a few schools that are somewhat smaller. For example, Homer Pittard Campus School is in 300 and something number. Kittrell is like the 300. Walter Hill's, 348, 350 now. That one's a little smaller. So as they grow, that's what we look at and say, as your numbers grow, let's add the other one half. So Pennsyl's been pretty good at trying to schedule people in two buildings. You know, they'd love to have full-time, but when you look at sometimes equitable is not fair. They're not the two same terms sometimes, because the number of students being served at one school by one teacher can certainly be higher, maybe, than a school that's serving half of it, a half teacher that's serving that number of students. So we maintain spreadsheets and formulas and try to do this in a knowledgeable way. You ask principals, would you like to have a full-time? You're going to get yes. So, but it's just a matter of what do you want or what can you afford? That's where you get to.
Are any of this growth in this particular line, are any of these the other half of a half position? Yes. And they could be that.
And actually, our art person, the new Ms. Halford, made some recommendations along with Mr. Zago in this. So we collaborated to do it. So she is looking at the numbers with us in this.
Mr. Odom, many of those that we're looking at the middle school already have 1.5.
Yeah.
Expanding it over to
They'll actually be better off.
It'll be able to serve those bands in a more consistent manner, like you were asking.
Okay, thanks.
If you have 1,200 at Siegel Middle, you're getting time, but you need to look at the other half to give them two full-time to do it. Because they have choral groups, they have band groups, they have certain instrumental groups broken out of this. We are getting better at our fine arts, and I think this is just kind of some of our commitment to that. School counselors, that's kind of where we're proposing. And that, again, many of these are adding, because of the size of the school. Rockville Elementary is topping 1,000. They've had 1.5. And along with not only the behavioral things, but one of the emphasis is coming down from the state, too, is they have given guidance counselors a very specific curriculum to follow now. They have standards, just like the classroom teacher and teaching algebra and all. And so this, again, is places where we probably need to look at adding another guidance counselor. Now, we sent Oakland High School one new counselor, Laverne High one new. Laverne High is a little bit tied to what you heard the other night. We need for them to get that grant, which we should get some reimbursement, hopefully on some of that. Oakland High, again, very likely could be over 2,300 next year. But now here's what's going to happen. When we open Rockvale High, we're going to have to look at by numbers again, and unless there's more monies at that time, maybe it will be, some of those with a 5, maybe a Blackman High with 2,300 students, may drop back to their 4, and they'll be transferred to Rockvale High. But that will be part of your rezoning and your reassigning teachers when you get to that point. I can say I served on the state BEP. They were very concerned with getting more counselors to help kids because of everything we're reading now. And so there is a move across the state to try to do that. I was hoping there'd be more BEP funding for it. I'm not sure. We haven't seen that from the state yet. Line 35 on page 2 is the Rockvale High startup staff. Mr. Sandvy's kind of estimated that, which you typically do. You typically start the high schools, January 1st? It's typically when we do selections, choices, things that have to be made. And then coming on right after that, very often they usually get a secretary. They start interviewing sometimes for positions. You also have to get your coaches. The interview, they really, I mean, for whomever takes that position, it's about 3 or 4 months of lots of decisions, a lot of people to talk to and interview that in place. Custodians, towards the end of it, you start thinking, but they won't be in the certified, but other positions as deliveries start being made, bookkeepers come on to start some of that process for training, so.
Mr. Odom, if we worked for the state, we would deduct that $385,000 from the $2.5 million that we're setting aside, and call that an equivalent. I don't know if we wanted to do that, but that would be kind of the game playing that somebody else would do with us. Mr. Sandvig, you're the only one smiling. You get my joke there, right? Okay, all right.
Well, the $2.5 million is for the 1920 year. The $5 million is for the 1920 year. Yeah. This is for your 18-19 year to start some of those people in January and that sort of thing.
I understand.
What it is.
Well, and one thing, especially with opening 2 schools, hopefully, in 1920, we get no money in the BEP formula for principals. There are half a dozen positions in a new school that you get no BEP funds for at all in the first year. Year 2, you start getting funding for those positions. So we'll be facing that next year.
Wow. Makes no sense. Does it? It makes no sense.
Well, your ADM runs about a year behind, and they
it's like they don't exist.
They say we're going to give you growth. The problem is your first growth money comes after Christmas in January, but you've had the kids in the class, giving them books, putting them in seats, putting the teacher in front of them the whole first half of the year. So for growing counties, that's an issue. But let me go on down to the other certified, and then you can pick one out or talk about it if you like. The Rocky Fork Elementary startup staff, and we're anticipating that they'll fund that tomorrow night when we go up there to go ahead and build it. We'd like to start it, bid it in time to open that in 19 also. The fall of 19, Rocky Fork Middle. Mm-hmm. That would mean you start Rockville High and Rocky Fork Elementary. I said middle, elementary. We got Rocky Fork Middle open. And that's basically a principal, and you usually do a secretary some, but they usually start about March. Late February and March on the elementary. High school works the whole second semester. This came out of one of your committees, coaching and athletic director supplements, estimated $172,460. We are making an estimate on the certified percentage increase, and the only information we have is we looked at what the governor proposed last year for teacher raises, and he put about half as much money in. So if last year it was 4, does this year mean 2? Maybe. We don't have that information. This, again, we're estimating. I can say I don't know whether we can maintain a solid 2 with the insurance cost and all that goes with it. Remember, the state basically pays you for the teachers that meet their plan, and not a district in this state operates on the number of teachers allocated by the state formulas. And the reason that is, I mean, they can take the whole number of third graders, divide by 20 and say this is X teachers, but when you stretch that over 24 schools that would have third grade for us, you know, if there's 15 more in this one, I mean, it just doesn't work out that way. You wind up having to place extra teachers in order to pull off the pupil-teacher ratio, which we monitor, and we move teachers too. So that could be, that one total would be a $4,327,000. That's, again, the number of people is your largest increase. So your certified personnel subtotal, $13,258,422. That's almost, it's 49.6% of the total increase we're anticipating tonight. So about half, but again, 70% of your people, 70% of our budget is people. it depends on when the budget is passed by the legislature, and then they call a meeting with the fiscal people in the state and give us that. Now, here's what we want from you. If you see other things that need to be in this, or you see something that's important to you, before our next meeting, please share that with Mr. Sandvig or me, so we can begin to build in cost. Or if something that you're not sure you want, or you want more information, please do that. Make your notes, and so that we can get as far along as we can. Our next meeting is April 2nd, I think. So you've got time to look it over and kind of see. Any question on certified right now? Any follow-up? Okay. I'm going to go to technology and software. One of the things that we're doing for our teacher in-service, the people that we're doing our teacher in-service tracking, which we have to do, is really not following through or doing it now. This is another vendor which takes our 3,000 teachers and tracks their in-service. They are required in-service. So that's about $55,000. That's not all new monies, because we've already been spending money for tracking software. Follett Library Tracking Software. That's not new monies either. That's electronic checkout in the library, so that's not new monies. Fast Math and Read 180. This is an annual subscription renewal. That's not a new item. Again, I just want y'all to see what we're doing on some continuing contracts. I think you need to know these things. The Microsoft 360 A3 enrollment thing, what that is, remember the kids can get Microsoft Office at home, and if you teach for us, or if you're a student in our system, you get free access to Microsoft Office. That's cost us about $250,000 to provide that to all teachers and all 45,000 students in North County schools, and their families, actually, because they can get about 2 or 3 licenses apiece. I don't have somebody here from technology tonight, so it's a good deal. I say that. Play Post-it. This is, again, an annual fee. This is another software that's used in our schools. RCS Online Course Applied Mathematics. The state has dropped finite math. So, and our online course is getting more rigorous and more robust. The nice thing about this one is you can tell commissioners and others too, everybody takes an online course is not direct teacher in a room. We're not having to build a room for them doing that, but we still have more and more kids sign on to our online. It's taught by our teachers. We bring them in for testing, so you may get somebody to help you do the homework, but what are you going to do on the day? That's the end of that online course. So we've got to deal with the finite math, which is no longer a course in Tennessee. The humanity elective, again, we need to have a piece of software for that one. Teacher stipends, to try to do that, about 10 of those. We pay stipends to our teachers to manage the students taking an online course. It's our people. They work extra time, but it's also a little supplement to them too. About $10,000 there. Okay, the next one is the technology, moving towards our computers at the two students to every single computer in all middle grades. The roughly cost for that one in doing it is about $1,439,998. Shifting some of the things, we've met with Mr. Solomon again today. We gave him some extra money last year. He's getting some of the Wi-Fi stuff already in, but he's really seeing a net gain from $1,439,998 less $600 that was already in there that we won't need. He's still seeing close to $800,000 gain. You follow my math there? Subtract $600,000 from $1,439. So we're not lowering technology. I'm going to ask again our people to show you their plan, and I think we may even be able to put one of those computers on your desk next time too, so you can see what students will be using for their online. And this is, I told you when we did the report card, if you remember that night, that we needed to move this. Rutherford County's behind, really, in this area. We need to move in that direction towards one-to-one. But it's Lenovo, Mr. Zago, am I right? I'm not Lenovo, it's Dell. At $190 is the cost of it to us for those units. They're going to do some special deals for us. that if parents want to buy it as a birthday present or as a Christmas present or something like that, that's a little over $200. So they're going to cut them a special price less than what's on the internet price for it, if you go in and try to buy it straight from Dell. So as part of the agreement, if we go this route, this should be nice for parents if they want to provide theirs with their own personal one. But you'll see the computer, and I think you'll be kind of impressed. So we've got some reductions there, but in order for the technology, the increase, about 3.5% increase, or $929,983. But the plan is to go from middle to high. You know, we've got to do that, but middle may be the best place to start for 1 year, move it up. We think the computers will last about 3 years. That's what we're estimating.
Software that runs the computers from Microsoft or whatever vendor for the software app, they stop supporting that, and that's how they make their money, is that after about 3 or 4 years, the support of those vendors ceases to exist, so therefore then the computer itself is not supported because of the technology that's been put on it. The hardware will last longer. The only people in the United States that they work with to do that is hospitals in the medical field, that they guarantee that. Where we would pay $190 for that device, they may pay $3,000 and $4,000 for that device.
You know, you can actually buy them on lease and they replace it at the end of 3 years. But our math right now, and working with Mr. Sandby in the finance department, the lease price over a 3-year period gets so close to the price of the machine that you may be better off just to go ahead and buy it. You know, another thing that they told us they might do, if a kid happens to carry it, say the 6th grader moves to his 7th and he carries that computer, that at the end of that 3-year period, they might sell it to the parent for much, much less, which is what they do on lease. They don't want them all back. So that can develop. Well, it should be exciting for our families. Any questions on the technology side right now? And we'll do a part of a presentation next time. Ms. Michael's taking notes on what we're supposed to do next time. We'll get those things together. Classified personnel. Oakland Middle School Annex Secretary, when that's built and in place, sometime there for next year, if we can get that done over the summer, which we put an extra secretary at Blackman Middle. If you've been there, you know what we're talking about there, as that number will climb. SPED Educational Assistant, this is IEP driven. So again, maybe as many as 18. We don't, unless we don't hire all 18 in August. Again, it's IEP driven, so you'll have some that may come in December and some in February. It just depends on what happens. SPED, Certified Occupational Therapy Assistant, again, to deal with occupational therapy, about one position there. English as a second language educational assistants. When we start some new classrooms, especially for newcomers, that sort of thing, you have to have an educational assistant. Very often the educational assistants that we employ speaks either for us Hispanic or an Asian language or something like that to help with the teachers in doing that. So very often that's the truth. But we're going to need to pick up, and our translators, we are required by federal law for IEP meetings, for teacher conferences and that sort of thing. If a parent requests it, to furnish a translator. Ms. Hall usually goes through MTSU. There's kind of a database there of what language do you speak? Can you come to parent school conference X night by the hour? We estimate in that maybe an additional $12,000. That's what Ms. Hall thinks she can cover it with. North Rutherford clerk, this is your teacher center, half-time position there, $16,162. That's the teacher center. It's down at Smyrna Primary School. Well, it's really at Smyrna Middle now in the old library, where that one is. Computer tech, this would help Steve Solomon again. That's pulling the wires, the sort of things we do there. Computer repair, $59,571. even these $190 computers that we're talking about buying, there's some repairs you can do on those. So we need to be better prepared to do what we can to do that repair. Clerical staff at Rockville High, you had your certified staff earlier. This is a clerical, partial year positions. Again, that one could be as much as $49,974. A clerical staff at Rocky Fork Elementary, that typically will probably just be a secretary for them at that particular time. 3 custodians. We've not seen exactly where they might be yet. Let's look at enrollment. Let's look at what we have for more custodians. Again, we do not open Rocky Fork Elementary or Rockville High till the 1920 budget, but we still have to deal with age of building and enrollments and that sort of thing. You look at situations like Oakland's going to have a lot more space when you open the new one, so you got to look at that. Custodians for Rockville High, there's 4 at least to start out, and that'll be a part of a year. Custodians Rocky Fork Elementary. Mr. Clardy's asked for 2 more maintenance staff. I'm not sure, was it plumbers? Do you know exactly what you and Mr. Curley talked about? Plumber and electrician. And still on classified staff on page number 5 of 7, this is your athletic trainers that, and you know, we don't know the total cost of this one yet because we, again, do not know how much TOA or HCA might do, but it needs to be in the budget in dealing with that. Yes, sir.
Is there any possibility that these athletic trainers are appropriately going to have any certified classification? I mean,
yeah, possibly 3 of them. We had 4 this year. See that little note? 3 part-time, 3 supplement CTE. They're health teachers.
okay,
We had 4 this year that teach for Ms. Pilgrim, the CTE program, and they wanted extra money, so they work after school for that trainer.
as trainers.
But that's getting less and less. One of them is starting a family. Gosh, he's good, but he said, I just can't do it next year.
Yeah.
So that's what we're running into. But then, again, this is our best estimate, but it may be high if we get funding that doesn't have to be local. We still have to put it in there because we're going to have trainers.
Right.
Whatever happens. So hopefully that won't be the total amount. Nurses, OTs, and CODAs with experience over 15. And you're going to see in this budget, I'm not doing much step changes because the person that replaces me may do some reorganization or some other stuff. So I'm not real comfortable doing a lot of that unless people's earning it or it's something that's just clearly out of line. But the people, it's not always easy to keep these people, and we stopped them at 15 years. These are people with college degrees too. Teachers we took to 21. It just seems to me like we need to go to 21 with them in that scale. And this is part of that scale, Ms. Moore, that y'all worked on, back there last year when we were working that. But that's basically, again, I think we need to look at that. 120-day contract for Assistant Superintendent Engineering and Construction. And classified percentage increase. If we hold the 2% increase there, that would be $802,596 estimated at this time. Basically for existing people. Again, we built in increases for the other new ones. Questions about classified personnel? I know this kind of hits you, so you don't know till you study it a while. Kind of see. Program improvements and requirements. Textbooks. Social studies adoption, and we don't use new social studies for 18-19. But we purchase in June for the next year. And for 19-20 will be the total social studies adoption, the world language adoption, the fine arts adoption, and growth for new students. And a new student may have to have 5 new textbooks, of course, or 6 in the subjects they take. So this is built in, and that's, again, the increase we have in the budget kind of for 17-18, $6,559,000, subtracted from that total estimated cost, about another $2 million because of that large adoption. It fluctuates. In the years we adopt reading, which is only at some elementary schools, the actual total cost goes down. So this is something that it tends to go up in a wave motion because we get more students. It's going to go up, but yes, sir.
I'm a little surprised that the digital textbooks haven't really taken off.
Charge you the same price as they do. The licensure for the digital textbook is the same price as the hardback. If you buy the hardback, they'll give you the digital. They have gotten together. So, but now we're coming to a time, here's a professional guess, within the next 5 years, as digital really comes on, because we're seeing it in science this year. I said something to you earlier, there's only one elementary science book that's even printed anymore. The others are online. Some of our middle schools and some of our high schools are online this time too.
The two books that look like are the front runners for our middle school and high school are online only. The middle school has a reference book about this, or a reference softback book about this large. The high school sciences do not have a book at all.
And those recommendations from those committees are coming for you. So the science is the one that starts 18-19, but Mr. Samuel, we budget that year ahead so that he can order them in June, so they're in the kids' hands in August. If we wait till the July 1 budget starts, they do not come. They're not here. You're in September, October. So this change is really for the ones listed here.
I just perceive here in the next few years, these students carrying these backpacks with a ton of books. It'd be just a little slim backpack that you slide the little iPad type notebook in, and the only thing that they're carrying is gym clothes or the athletic stuff. So
one of the reasons we didn't choose Chromebooks right off the bat was basically you don't have hard drives in them today. They do the Google, everything upline. We have some hard drive, not a lot, in these 190 books that you could download the book in it and take it home too. But boards in the future, you're absolutely right, it will go to all online as news and other things coming now. And that's why I say we're behind in this area. We've got to move in this direction. So that's program improvements requirement, textbooks, transportation. Mr. Snell's recommended 9. Was it two special ed and 7? What was it? Okay. Okay.
So we have a reduction.
That would be $320,000. If you give the bus drivers, we didn't give them the full amount last time, but if you give them the same 2% you give classified and certified, if we can match 2%, maybe 1.5 before it's over, but if we can do it and you want to give the same, that's what it would take for your bus drivers to get a raise also. So transportation increase about 3.1% for your budget. Any question on that? I don't want to leave it.
2% be for mileage and seat
rate, basically, and all. You do it on every piece of it, yeah. On the page 6 is other things. This is teacher training in there, which we've done for years. That is the IB training for Oakland high school teachers, the AP training for all. That's not rapping, Mr. Sandvig. We need to make it rap. I noticed that. AP training for all high schools, people teaching advanced placement classes go for training. The other one's going to be Cambridge. Smyrna High is looking at Cambridge. Cambridge is a summer program to IB. Several schools in Nashville. It's an international program also. And they can take a Cambridge course just like they can. And it's again, carries extra weight when you go to college, that sort of thing to do. So they're interested in that. So all of those trainings, 100,000. The IB Oakland High subscription is about $28,000 a year. Butch Vaughn said it wouldn't cost anything when we started it. I remember that statement. Oh, that never works, does it?
Nope.
Cambridge license for Smyrna High, though, is about $10,000. If we continue the Avid support for Smyrna High, that's about $18,000 there. But we spent about $146,000 this year, so you can kind of subtract some of that off. Again, some Rockvale startup cost in there. You know, we give the principals some monies to order the uniforms and the things to start the school with, and you've done that, which Mr. Sandy can tell you more about if you're interested. The Rockville Elementary startup, they're not buying too many uniforms and stuff, but there is some. How do you buy your office supplies? How do you start up with things other than we put the desk in there and the chair in there, but how do you get some of the other things you need? So we give them some money to start up also too. And we have budgeted right now 4 driver's ed cars. As you know, Nissan's pulling out of that. So kind of an estimate there that you're going to have driver's ed cars. When you open Rockvale, the next year you're going to have your replacements plus what you need for Rockvale. So that number as cars get older will go up. Okay. Overall, you know, right now, really raw estimate, $26,748,517.
Over and above last year.
Over and above. Now, if you remember, we started from the year before last year, if my memory serves me correct, about $340 million. And after last year's, when all the state monies came, this is not all local monies, it's state monies and all built in on this, federal monies built in on it, other things too. We actually went to 364. The budget you approved last year was 364. It went from 340 to 364. It actually went up about 24 million. But here's my problem this year. If they take 0.1% as ability to play, you know, I mean, will we get as much money as we did from the state? Yes, because we got more students. But will we get as much per pupil from the state? No, if they change that TASER index and pay us, make that adjustment. We won't get as much per pupil as you do, but you will get more money because you got more pupils.
About something out of all that almost $27 million.
How much of that, just your best guess, would be attributable to unfunded mandates?
Because this is new monies, there's a whole lot of it in the existing that's unfunded. Right. So it would be grossly underreported. I don't know.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Here where, just say line 94 there, we'll use it.
Okay.
Not a new expenditure for 18-19. Well, is this 26 million what our increase is?
It is. See the red number in line 98? That's where, before that's totaled up, we subtract out 146,000, right?
It's not written on our paper.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm sorry. It's in parentheses.
That is correct.
We'll print them color copies next time. Anything in parentheses, what we spent last year, and is subtracted out of that to get to that 26. All of those others were subtracted out.
The expenditures,
yes, sir,
that didn't change have been subtracted.
Right.
Okay.
And in this, it may be giving you more information than you want, but I wanted y'all to see kind of the big picture of how many tests, how much teacher training is. I think it gives you background knowledge, and you need to know that. This is what you do, set budgets. So, again, we can push this out to you if they want to look to it online. It wouldn't be any trouble at all for me to go in there and send it to y'all by email, too, if you want to look at it some more over the next few days. Too.
Mr. Odom, last year you supplied to us the requests that principals had made. Is that still a document that's easily accessible?
Drop the word easily, but it's accessible. We have it. They did all do it. We can give that to you again. Much of that has been blended into things Mr. Clardy does, if it's a construction or it's something like that, or if it's requests for custodians, extra teacher to teach this subject or that, we've tried to blend as much as possible.
I appreciate the summary that you've given us here because that was kind of overwhelming.
The big picture, you kind of got the big picture.
Yeah.
We'll do line items later.
Yeah, this may be just exactly what we need. I just, a little explanation. Last year we looked at it that way. This year we're looking at it this way. I kind of like the way you've presented this.
How many pages was it last year on all the principals thing? I remember you sent it to 40, 60 pages. What was it?
Yeah,
it was a lot of pages.
Board, could I respectfully suggest, and now that if we have questions, and we probably all do, that we forward those on, get back in touch with the director or the appropriate person, which is probably be Mr. Sandvik, before our next meeting on April 2nd. We can get more details on any single thing that you might want. Would that be acceptable to the board? I have questions on 3 or 4 items, and I think we maybe April 2nd. We're going to have a little bit more information by then, won't we? A little bit more. No? Yes?
I think
Okay.
it'll be your 3rd meeting when we might be able to come out with that big line item.
Okay.
The state quantifies exactly. There's another pending thing that you hear in the legislature, is not in this at all, is possible safety money. So, so much per pupil. That's his committee's meeting. Now, I was informed that we may get some monies, but it's one-time money, so I don't think you'd want to spend that money necessarily on people, because that becomes unfunded mandates in any other years after that. But we may be able to do something with that.
Is that coming from the task force that the governor?
It is. It's coming from him and that, and I think he's, what's likely to happen, instead of putting so much in their rainy day fund, because of the events that's happened, what I think, not knowing, that they're probably going to move a little bit less in the rainy day fund and give school districts some more monies for this safety thing. We are in the process of ordering now we got enough safety monies left, the Raptor system for all of our high schools. We had it elementary through middle. That's where you go in and put your driver's license. So, we'll get that out of this year's money, so that'll be in place before they start next year.
Do you think that money that comes for the safety, they'll tell you exactly how you have to use it, or they'll give it discretion?
Not what the commissioner told me.
Okay.
Because you don't have the same thing throughout districts all across the state. I can tell you our conversations, we talked about it today. We had the debriefing last week with Mr. Kubley and 5 SROs and principals and other people up here. Do we want the buzz-in system at every school? That might be monies you do that. That's a one-time thing that's in place. You got it. You start beginning to look at what can we put in. If the state gives us one-time money for safety, what can we do to enhance that safety and purchase it at that time and put it in place? SROs, people that may be listening for us over the web, SROs, except for Holloway and the 2 alternative schools, which we fund, is funded through the sheriff's budget. So we do not have control of that. But we have 2. I saw where Williamson County was thinking about adding the second one to their high school. We've been doing that for a while. So you got 2 at your high schools, 1 at your elementary, and that's out of his. He's going to have a pretty good increase the next year there, but if we furnish the SRO, 2 at Rockville High and 1 at Rocky Fork Elementary, that would be 3 new positions for him in 19.
Okay, am I reading the board correctly that April 2nd for further budget talks is acceptable to everyone? If you have questions, you can forward those on to the appropriate person here at the central office between now and then, because I have another area I need to go into, and I'm not sure how deeply we can do this. But
please send me anything you'd like to see added, so we
okay,
can estimate cost. And then when you meet next time, it'll be there. If you're interested in something to be added, send it, and then we'll look at it.
Okay. something occurred that I did not anticipate, and I dare say you probably did not either. And I'm not sure how deeply we can go into this. So, Ms. Bush, please pay close attention as you always do, and throw up a red flag if I go too far here, because this is not really on our agenda. But you need to know it if you don't already know it. Ms. Michaels tells me that our candidate for the 21st, Dr. Garrett, has withdrawn her name. Okay. Now, that is, she was to be interviewed a week from tomorrow night, so whatever you need to do with your schedule, then you need to make that change. Now, that leaves us in a little bit of a quandary in that we have 3 candidates left. Of course, we've interviewed one already. I'm not sure exactly where we want to go here. And as I said, this is not on the agenda, and I'm not even sure we can vote on it, but, you know, we can set up a time to discuss this later if you wish. I'm not sure what we do. If we go back to the Tennessee School Board Association and say, do you have a candidate that you want to add? And I'll just keep one thing in mind. If we do that, I've got no objection to that whatsoever, if that's what you want Ms. Michaels and I to do. But we will have to take whoever he says. I don't have no idea who that is. I did not know this until I walked in the door tonight, so I have not contacted Mr. Bennett. Or we can leave it with the 3 candidates that we have now and that they recommended to us, and go ahead and interview them and move on from there. If you want me to make the decision by myself, which I will do, I will tell you what my decision is already. I'm going to leave it with the 3 candidates that we have now. They're fine people. They were recommended to us. It could be that the others, and how many do we have? 15? So there'll be 11 people left. They may have tied for the next spot. I don't know. Mr. Blair, a helpful comment, I hope.
Yes, sir. The point is that we asked TSBA for a minimum of 3 and a maximum of 5.
We did do that.
They sent us the 4 best candidates from that committee's opinion. So of the 4, 1 has withdrawn. So I see no reason why we would expand that search again, because they sent us the 4, in their opinion, the 4 best. So I would think 3, your decision would be appropriate.
Well, and I appreciate that very much. I probably need to point out, although this may not be entirely appropriate here, but if they gave us another name, that person, who I'm sure would be qualified, I don't even know if they've got another name. You know, I don't know if they picked 4. So evidently they didn't have a 5th person that they thought was, I don't know. But we would give that person a whole lot less time to prepare. There's no resume for that person. We have no information. And it would be, I think, very difficult on them. But I obviously will do what this board wants.
Need a motion?
I don't know that I need, Ms. Bush, I can't get a motion yet. I don't need that, do I?
I don't think we can vote on this.
I don't
There's
think
no
we can
public
vote on it.
notice. No, I would not advise voting on this tonight.
Is it something that requires a vote?
No, I don't believe so. I think that.
I'm okay? But I don't want to exceed my authority.
Unless the board wants to add another candidate, that would require a vote. But if the board wants to continue with the 3 candidates, that will not require a vote.
Okay. All right. We would have to have either another meeting to do that one thing, or we could add it, and we can't add it to tomorrow night because it's too soon. So we would have to go to the 19th, that would be an interview night as well. And I'm really not arguing for this or against this. I'm just looking at the dates here. And if we selected somebody and to interview again, and we wanted to interview them on the same date that Dr. Garrett, that person would have 36 hours. 2. And I just don't think that's, now we could go additional 2 or 3 days. I'm going to leave it like it is unless somebody comes over and hits me with some heavy object.
She did not call Ms. Michaels till 3:30. So, I mean, it's late today, so that's why you didn't know it this morning. None of us did.
Matter of fact, I spent the morning with Ms. Moore and I lining up the tour for the lady at 3 schools, so I'll have to undo all that tomorrow morning. I'm sure Ms. Seymour and others will be very disappointed, Mr. Nance and Ms. Nichols. Well, we could, yeah, they promised us a lunch. We could go do that. Well, I don't hear any groundswell of opposition, so, okay, is there anything else we need to discuss? All right, tomorrow night, let's see, we interviewed Dr. Ash. We have dinner at 5 o'clock, another delicious meal by the same Ms. Miller. Is she doing it again? You can serve the same thing as far as I'm concerned. It was delicious. Anything else, board? Y'all, oh, you have Go Blue Raiders take on Vermont in 44 minutes. Vermont, they're done.
Mr. Blair wants to know if he can bring stuff to take a doggy bag.
I think he did that the last time, I believe. Congratulations to the Riverdale girls, by the way, and good luck to the Riverdale boys and the Blackman boys tomorrow. They play in the state tournament. Okay, I think that's probably all we can do. I really appreciate the input and the questions tonight. Thank you, Mr. Director. Mr. Sandy, well done. We are adjourned.